Welcome to Custom Homebuilders Solutions, also known as CHS, a job costing, full accounting, and profit management software designed specifically for the professional home builder. This video is going to be almost a finalization of various other tools on the cost codes master setup. Our previous videos about setting up cost codes we've done and about items, etc. But this one I'd like to just talk about the other buttons on this list of cost codes and a couple of the little tools and utility features that have to do with changing prices or moving cost codes around or trying to delete cost codes, that type of thing. Basic tools for the cost code setup window other than the setup and the items and default notes videos that we've already had about this cost code window. The first thing I'd like to do is I've opened a jobs list, and I'd like you to notice that this job, floor plan B, we just named it that, has a what if of yes on it. And if you watch the job setup, what if means you can create a budget for this job and then copy that budget to other jobs. You can set up the job and then copy this job to other jobs because it has maybe some measurements that all go with something that you called floor plan B because you are going to redo similar houses like that, so you've set up specs and measurements for this particular job and you marked it as what if. The reason I'm showing you that is because I'm going to do something on the cost code setup list, and we already have a budget for floor plan B. And I'd like you to notice that this cost code 1090 miscellaneous permits and fees, we have a budget total or a unit price of $385. Now this is a what if job and we set it up as floor plan B, so we are expecting to copy this budget and maybe the job to other budgets for other jobs that have that same similar floor plan. So back on the cost code setup, let's take a look at what happens if we change the unit price for this 1090. So let's edit this cost code like we saw in previous videos about editing a cost code. And let's just decide that we really want to have for this miscellaneous permits and fees, we've decided it needs to be 400 based on experience or something that we've learned. Now what happened after I typed in the 400 is that it popped up a list of all of my what if jobs. It just looked for any what if jobs and what unit price they might have on a budget, any what if jobs that do have a budget. So I can see that right here, this floor plan B, it gives me the opportunity to use an edit button and go ahead and change that budget for the cost code 1090 to 400 so that the next time I copy that budget to a what if job, it'll be 400. And let's just say this is another one that we'd like to change. And maybe we know something about these other jobs and being what if jobs and that we might be copying them, but let's decide we're not. We're just wanting to update the what if jobs that we've set up to the new unit price. And what it did was look for any of these jobs that had budgets so that you could update them pretty quickly without having to go run around and try to figure out if you wanted to change your unit price that would be being copied. So I wanted to just show you that. If I submit that new price here for this cost code and we go back and we take a look at that budget for floor plan B, normally when you're doing that type of thing you wouldn't have budgets open, you would reopen them, but we're just going to refresh this budget real quickly here, and we'll go down and look at our 1090 cost code, and you can see that its price got changed to the well, I have to click on it, to the unit price of 400. So next time it gets copied for another job, that what if job's pricing will have been updated. So that I just wanted to show you that CHS will detect that you've made a change to the price on the cost code setup and will pop up a list of all your what if jobs. So let's go over some other things on this. The first thing I want to do, and we're going to come back to a little bit more searching, is I want to search for just the group that would have permits and fees, because I'm going to do some work in that group. So I just opened the search button for field searches, and then in the groups I clicked on this, I could actually use my control key and select other groups, but we're going to just do permits and fees, and I'm going to do search because I really just want to be working in this area of permits and fees for just a moment. Now what I'd like to do is talk about what if I decide I want this water tap permit to be one of the items under building permits, and we had a whole video about using items. We do have water tap and sewer fees, so let's just go ahead and delete that item from this cost code just because. And we have water tap permit. We decided we want to make our cost codes not even as detailed as this, and that we'd like to have the water tap permit maybe be an item. So the first thing I can do when I click the edit button is there's some tools over here to the right when you open to edit, and one of them says, if needed, create item from this cost code and attach it to another cost code. So I'm going to go ahead and look at this water tap permit. I want it to be in building permits for some reason, 1010 as an item. So I'm going to create a new item, and it tells me the new item has been created. And that's all I wanted to go over about that for just a minute. We're heading towards getting this one deleted, but let's check our items under building permits. And now you can see we have a water tap permit, and we called it building permits because we didn't know what assembly that we wanted to put it into, but we could now change it to be in that same assembly as the others under permits and fees, and save that. And now it's one of the assemblies. If there had been a unit price set up for water tap permit for the cost code, that unit price would have come in here and attached to the item, but we'll just leave that alone for right now. So now we have this water tap permit, and we want to delete it. We want to see if we can delete it. And so now that's what we're talking about, is using the red X button for trying to delete a cost code. So the first thing that came up said it found budget records for this cost code, and the thing about deleting a cost code, if it's been used in any of your records or your accounting database, etc., it can't be deleted because it needs to refer to the cost code in those records. So what the program will do is start searching for where it's used in the records, and it'll pop up the first thing that it finds where it's been used. And what it may have found a budget record, but that there was no budget attached to that, so you can decide to delete any zero budget records. So a zero budget record won't affect the total budget for any jobs. So this is just a little cleanup utility to go ahead and delete any zero budget records, and so I said okay to do that. Now let's try to delete it again. And it does say there are budget records. That's telling me to see a list of these, I could go click the used button right here to see which budgets that might have been used in. So let's cancel, do not delete or update those zero budget records because we already did that. So let's look at the used. And that is another feature on here, that you can see all kinds of places where this cost code has been used, but it was indicating that it was used in a job budget, and that meant, since we deleted the zero ones, that there's a couple of budgets here that have that particular cost code with an amount on it. So what we want to do, and by the way, you can go see if there's been any actual job costs posted to it, and this one hasn't. If it's found in your accounting database, it cannot be deleted. That's a good reason for getting your cost codes set up so that they're like you like them before very much accounting gets started, so that you don't have to go through trying to clean them up because they're suddenly attached to a lot of records. In this case, this particular cost code wasn't used in the accounting, so we're going to do some other things here. If we go back, if we go to the budget for Vista View, we're going to see that that water tap permit has $200 on it and $250, and that building permits has $1125. I'm showing you that for a reason, because I'm about to use another tool on the cost code setup window, which it suggests that you might want to use, and that's if I edit this water tap permit again. There is another tool over here for cost codes. Move all cost records for this cost code to another cost code. So what it's going to do is ask you which cost codes you want to move that to. All records, like budget records, accounting records, etc. There's some explanation about that here. And the program will then, if you click this button, and if you say it's okay to do that, it's going to run through and take care of updating all of your records so that the any budget numbers are going to be combined up on a budget. Hang on one second, and that utility has been done. That doesn't mean we've deleted this yet, but we have moved all associated records for it into building permits. So let's go take a look at our budget for Vista View, refresh it, and let's see how the 1090 has come out here and how the 1010. Suddenly 1090 has 0, and remember we had, I think, 250 in it and 1125 here, something like that. So now you're going to see that building permits has been changed to this amount, because the amount from miscellaneous, well, water tap isn't even on here anymore because we moved the records and marked it not to show. But if I click on this, building permits, you're going to see that behind it, it's indicating to you, it's going to show you some about what happened in moving those by creating an item for what was moved from there. So see how this water tap permit, it was $200, got moved in as an item that is selected on the budget, and added to other items here to increase the amount of the budget to this. And so the program took care of updating that for you. And it would have updated any actual job cost records to that other cost code, etc. with that utility. So let's go back to cost code setup, and since we did move all associated records from water tap permit, now we have it under building permits as an item, so we aren't too worried about getting rid of it. So I'm going to click the X button. It's checking through my database to see if it found it anywhere, and it did not. So therefore I can click OK to delete that water tap permit. And one of the reasons I did the search for this group first is so that when it refreshes after that, I'll just be seeing this group and not the whole list again, because it looks to the latest search that I had for that. So that's how you can do some of the cleaning up of your cost codes. Use this button to delete. Like I said, you can use this used feature to review all kinds of places where this cost code has been used. I can look at actual job costs for that cost code 1010. There hasn't been any. We might want to clear our search now and show all, so that I can demonstrate that used just a little bit better with a cost code that is used more often, like maybe framing labor. I know that one's been used by this builder. And right here, I'll click on framing labor, and I'll click used, and I'm going to see if it's been posted to any actual job costs for any jobs. And you can see that it has, that it's been used. You can see what jobs it's been used in, what bills have been posted for job costs. You can do some averaging of the different jobs and the job costs. You can also click the used button on the job budget and see this same information. It can be useful for deciding what to budget for. This is the actual costs, job costs for jobs. This one has this much in framing labor. This one right now has this much, which isn't much. And get an average. You can do some check marks to select certain jobs to average and then filter those out with that link, etc. You can see all the estimated costs at completion. that have used that cost code, which can be handy for reviewing what you budgeted for that cost code. You can see it shows you which cost code it is up here, what change orders you might have issued, POs, actual costs. You can really review everything about that cost code in the database. Look at documents that have been assigned to that cost code, vendor codes, vendors that have been assigned to that cost code, and produce a list of them if you like. And then here's some basic information about that cost code. So that's what the used button is all about. It's very handy. The other thing I'd like to do is show you about what if I decide I want one of these cost codes to be in a different group. So I wanted to go up here. Let's say for some reason we want septic permit to suddenly be in the utilities group of stuff. I'm going to move it back after I do it. But let's click this move question mark, and what it says is just to click the pencil edit icon, decide to move it to a different group. But if you decided to move it to a different group, like 1400, say you selected this group 1400, you would probably want to change the cost code to be 14 something so that it fits right, and you'd want to review your cost codes before you do this down there in the utilities area to see which cost code you might assign it. And if you change the cost code itself, that will cascade update throughout the entire program any records that had the 1050 cost code and change it to whatever 1400 cost code that you decide to put in here. I'm actually just going to reset this and not move it to that section, but that's how you move it to a different group. The other things that are on here are various reports and labels after you've got all your cost codes set up like you want. Remember, we talked about there's group headings that you can set up, so you can print just a list of your group headings if you'd like to. This opens in what they call an HTML view, so that you can easily export to Excel. If you'd like to see these in a PDF, oftentimes a PDF is a better one to take it to, because your just HTML view won't honor that we've now put these into 2 columns. It won't honor page headings or page breaks. Notice this says page of 1 of 1 now, because that's all the group headings that we have. And you could of course use your tools to do something with that. If I send these to Excel, and you'll notice on all these what they call HTML reports, you can click to send it to Excel and quickly have it open your Excel on your machine if you have it, so that you can do things with these as you like in an Excel file. That's true with almost all reports that open. So like I say, this is called an HTML report. If you get down to the bottom, you'll see it says page 0 of 0, because this is actually really just another little web page, and it can't really honor pages. And that's why you need to export to PDF for your best view. But this will open quickly for you to review. If you don't need to print it, it's a good review to see first. So other reports and labels, we can of course print our basic cost code list, grouped by cost code by groups, and then how much is in each group. Export that to PDF. And I'm doing that for this one just because I'd like you to see that it's also now honoring more of the design that I did to have these show in 2 different columns, so there's not as many pages of those. So that's the basic cost code groups. Another reports. We're going to come back and talk about our very next video, and probably last video about cost codes is about assigning stages to cost codes, and we'll get back to that, so we won't talk about that report for now. Cost codes, pricing, and notes will give you all of your default pricing and any notes that you typed about the cost code will print here just for information. So this is a good report, to print all your things, look at the pricing you've set up, that kind of thing. Let's look at our reports and labels. This will take just a few moments because we're going to group two types of reports together called a linked report for showing all the items that we've set up behind the cost codes, and that's a really handy one to review all of your cost codes and all of your items. You'll see it even jumping around just a little bit because what it has to do, items are actually in a separate table attached to the cost codes, and what it has to do is go get basically little linked reports to attach to the main report, and that's why you wait just a little while for this particular report to open. Because it's doing that, you'll see how this is actually a little sub-report of this report, building permits, and it's showing you the items that you have attached to your various cost codes. Plus it gives you your pricing and that type of information, so you can see if you're working on items, you can see all the ones that you've given items to. This is just going to be a list of all the items you've set up, grouped by cost code, so the only cost codes that will show up will be cost codes that do have items. That one can be fast because we don't have to show all the cost codes and then assign a little report to those for the items. This report, this one will show you all your items with photos and things that you've attached to them and all notes, so it's a more expanded report of your items that shows a lot more about them. We were doing some of our previous videos and assigning some plumbing fixture photos to those particular cost codes. So you can see how you can get reports of all that. Now another very handy tool here is that we have a couple of buttons that are for producing labels, and it tells you that these work well with the Avery 5266 label. This was labels just for your group headings in case you're wanting to use those in some notebook or some file folders where you just have your group headings for your cost codes. You can print these on the label product form, and that's pretty handy. You can also do labels for every single cost code if you find that those will be useful to you. It shows underneath the cost code what group that is assigned to. The other thing is there's various search features here on this screen. One of them is called keyword search, and keyword means I can type part of a cost code title in and find everything that has that title. So I'm looking for everything that has plumb for plumbing in it. I could have typed the whole word plumbing, but just wanting to be sure I find everything that has the word plumbing, and I can do that quickly. If I want to separate by a comma and find everything that has that PLUM and FRAM for framing, I can do that, and I could keep going separating things by comma. So that's a fast way to look for some cost code if you can't remember what cost code you put it to, because these are in cost code order. Notice that I can sort, but it won't affect the grouping. So if I sort by the cost code title, that's not going to help a whole lot. But you can click on these column titles and sort within the group by that particular, if you click once it's ascending, if you click twice it's descending. So the field search we already opened a minute ago to look for this particular group, but I'm going to clear the search fields. One thing while you're working on cost codes, and of course you can go down here and select different ones. It says shift key for ranges, or you could click on one and start scrolling down to select just those cost codes, but I'm going to clear that. The other thing is maybe when you're working on stages later, you just want to see the cost codes assigned to a particular stage. We'll come back to that. Maybe you want to see all the ones that you put a labor cost type on because you're just checking to make sure those all look okay. That all the ones you put a cost type of labor, because that can come into play when you're producing general liability insurance audit reports. So you can review these and decide maybe some of the cost codes that have the cost type of labor, which is all it's showing now based on my search. You could decide if you needed to do something about that. The other handy thing might be, remember when we talked about default pricing, you can set some default quantities so that when you load those into a new budget, The quantities are already there. Now, if you set up a measure code like living square feet, the program is going to look to the job's living square feet and drop that as a quantity on a new budget. But then anything else, if you have an assigned quantity, if it doesn't find a spec for it, um, it'll drop in whatever quantity you have set up on the cost code master. So I just put a 0 to search for quantities, default quantities that are 0. This one that says each, I might want to edit it. This living square feet, I don't care about the quantity because it's going to look to the job. Living and slab, it'll look for what I've set up for my job specs to drop in as a quantity in the budget. But maybe there's certain ones that every time I open a new budget, I really would like for it to have a 1 in the quantity so I don't have to type it. Remember, this is your master. It's not a budget, and it's a master that can be used to copy all of these into a new budget. So when this particular cost code gets copied into a new budget, it'll now have 1 at 50, and you can change that quantity, of course, when you do a budget. But maybe there's some of these that you won't be. You have the total and you want a 1 in, so you don't have to remember to type a 0. So you could look for those. This little tool right here lets you update all quantities to 1 if there's no measure code. The reason for that is because a measure code might be ruling what quantities are going to drop in for you on a new budget, as we discussed earlier. The other search features, I think you can get a pretty good idea back here on the field searches about how you can look for various things you're trying to work on. And there's some search tips down here. I could say I want to search for, let's clear these search fields, for all unit prices that are greater than 500, and that's a greater than symbol in 500. But read these. There's things for not equal to, ones that are blank, ones that aren't blank. And these are the kind of codes that you would put in some of these fields to do your searching. So you can do some pretty elaborate searching. And I did a search now for all that have a unit price greater than 500. So that's all the cost codes that I'm seeing there. Our very next video will be about attaching stages to cost codes and how those stages are used. This should take care of most of the features on this window in the past videos about cost codes and this video, and we will continue on to assigning stages to cost codes, and then we should be about finished with all the cost codes. There's several videos about cost codes because these are the backbone, and they should be set up like you need them to be used throughout the program before you get started on much of your accounting or anything else. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.